What would you do if the world expected you to fail, live in front of millions? What if the person waiting to tear you down was one of the sharpest voices on television? This is the story of how Caroline Leavitt didn't just survive the moment, she transformed it. Some invitations change your life, not because you accept, but because of what you're walking into. It started with a buzz, low and quiet, like the whisper of a coming storm. Caroline was in her DC office, catching up on the kind of emails that never stopped, when her aide slid the phone across her desk. No words, just a single text glowing on the screen. You're invited to appear live on the rundown with Miles Barron. No edits, no filters, one-on-one. For a second, Caroline didn't move. Her fingers hovered over her laptop mid-keystroke. Miles Barron wasn't just any host. He was a human headline, the king of televised takedowns, political, cultural, personal. He didn't care. If you walked on his stage, you walked into a trap. And now, he wanted her. Her team buzzed into a frenzy. One advisor immediately started pacing. He's a sniper with a smile. You go in there, your target practice. Another murmured, we can decline. Say you're overseas. Say you're sick. No one expects you to walk into a lion's den. Caroline didn't flinch. She picked up her phone, stared at the message, then typed, challenge accepted. Let's talk. Unfiltered. She hit send. The silence in the room wasn't agreement. It was awe. Courage doesn't always feel like fire. It often feels like silence, waiting. That night, DC hummed with the usual noise. Car horns, late-night news chatter, the echo of life in motion. But in Caroline's apartment, everything was still. No TV, no music, just the dim glow of a floor lamp and the quiet click of a spoon in her teacup. She sat alone at her kitchen table, the invite still fresh in her mind. She'd seen the viral clips, politicians leaving Barron's show shredded, their sound bites turned into punchlines. One guest's pause became a meme. Another's expression became a cautionary tale. But she wasn't afraid of being wrong. She was afraid of being reduced, cut into pieces, edited into someone else's version of who she was. That's why she said yes. Because they didn't expect her to. She glanced at the clock. 12:17 a.m. Sleep wouldn't come easy. Not tonight. But that was okay. She wasn't here to sleepwalk through life. She was here to wake it up. She whispered into the quiet, not as a speech, not for anyone else to hear. I don't need to prove him wrong. I need to prove I belong. Every performance begins with an audience. But not every audience wants you to win. The next day, the studio was a different kind of battlefield. The air smelled like old lights and new nerves. Staff darted between camera setups and cue cards. Techs adjusted mic levels. But Caroline noticed something else. They weren't just preparing a show, they were setting a trap. As she waited backstage, the walls shook with laughter from the audience warm-up. Barron's team played past clips where he'd eviscerated previous guests, one-liners sharp enough to draw blood. They handed out free mugs, hyped the crowd, preloaded the mood. Caroline wasn't just entering a show, she was stepping into a performance. Her aide approached. You okay? Caroline nodded, slow and steady. I've never been more clear. She looked out at the audience from the edge of the curtain. Not hostile, not friendly, just loaded. They weren't here for a conversation, they were here for a show. Once the lights are on, there's no script, only the truth and what you do with it. The band played the show's signature jingle. Lights snapped on like lightning bolts. Miles Barron walked out to thunderous applause, waving as if he owned the world. Maybe in this room he did. His intro was quick, biting. Tonight, we're joined by a name you've seen in your feed, your headlines, maybe even your nightmares. Caroline Leavitt, digital strategist, controversy connoisseur, and apparently brave. Laughter, applause, a few boos for flavor. Caroline walked out to that wall of noise, not loud enough to welcome, just enough to warn. She shook his hand, sat down, crossed her legs, didn't flinch. Baron leaned in. Let's start where the internet did, the Echo Plan leak, a strategy memo allegedly internal that just happened to end up in the inbox of a very curious reporter. Your team calls it a misunderstanding. The internet calls it war. The audience chuckled. Baron smirked. Caroline smiled, just faintly. I didn't come here to perform, Miles. I came to be heard. And just like that, the first curtain lifted. The show had started, but the performance, wasn't going according to script. Sometimes the most powerful moment isn't what's said, it's what breaks. The interview was only 10 minutes in, but Baron was already searching for a pivot, a viral moment, a clip to meme, a phrase to weaponize. His tone sharpened, his rhythm quickened. He leaned back theatrically, grabbed something from behind his desk, and held it up like a magician revealing a final trick. A blown-up mock email, cartoonish, crude, titled in big bold letters, Deploy Phase 2, I'll handle the press. Gasps, laughter. The audience was eating it up. Baron raised his eyebrows and tapped the poster. Satire, of course, but admit it, it has style. Caroline didn't blink. Her smile was tight but unfazed. Clever design, though I've never used a sunglasses emoji in my life. Laughter again, lighter this time. She wasn't resisting the joke, she was redirecting it. I run strategy, Miles. I don't send memes from war rooms, but if making up fake emails helps you tell a better story, be my guest. Then it happened. As Baron reached for his mug, his signature white ceramic cup with the Rundown logo in dark navy, his elbow clipped the edge of the desk. The mug flipped. For a split second it hovered, then shattered against the floor. White shards skipped across the stage like startled birds. The audience gasped. The room fell into stunned silence. Baron froze. Caroline didn't laugh, didn't smirk. She looked at the pieces, then looked at him. Unfiltered indeed, she said quietly. The silence cracked. Laughter, applause. Not wild, but honest. Baron gave a strained grin, but something had shifted, not just the mood, but the momentum. In a viral world, seconds matter, and silence speaks for volumes. Backstage, the control room lit up like a storm. Producers scrambled. Someone whispered into a headset, "Did we get the angle on the mug?" They did, and they already knew it would be clipped, captioned, and uploaded within minutes. #mug break moment was trending before the commercial break, but the clip wasn't what they expected. It wasn't about Baron's fall, it was about Caroline's stillness. She didn't gloat, she didn't pounce. She held space, let the moment breathe, let the truth settle. Tweets rolled in, she didn't even flinch. That's grace under pressure. Baron came to win. She came to lead. Baron saw it too. His signature grin wavered. This wasn't the rhythm he was used to. He was throwing punches in a room that had suddenly started listening. Producers in the booth exchanged looks. This is going off script. Let it roll, came the reply. It's better than anything we wrote. Sometimes you flip the script by pressing play. Baron tried to recover. His voice bounced back into satire, reaching for the next punchline. But Caroline was ahead of him. She turned slightly in her chair. Miles, you believe in transparency, right? He hesitated. Of course, that's what this whole show is built on. She gave a small nod. Good. Then you won't mind if I play something. She gestured off stage. The studio screen lit up. It was a clip from Baron's own show, dated 3 years earlier. A younger version of him, solemn, mid-rant. Sometimes we need to limit how far certain voices can reach, especially when they pose harm to society. Free speech doesn't mean speech without consequences. The clip ended. Silence. Baron didn't speak. The crowd didn't laugh. For once, the space wasn't filled with snark or sound bites. Just breath. So when I'm labeled dangerous for making a mistake, Caroline said, even while I sit here owning it, isn't that the same instinct? Just in reverse. Someone in the audience clapped. Once, then again. Then others joined. Not a roar, not a chant, just recognition. You don't need applause to own a moment. Just presence. Baron adjusted his papers. He was still in it, but the frame had shifted. He was no longer the conductor. He was now a participant. Caroline leaned in, not in defiance, but in clarity. I'm 27. I'm learning. I've led teams, made choices, taken heat. And I'm still here, not hiding, not posting a Notes app apology, just here. She let that sit. But you know what stings? She added, voice low. The idea that someone like me, young, female, digital native, must be a puppet with good lighting. A few nods in the crowd. One person even murmured, "Wow. I came here because you ask hard questions. I'm not afraid of those. I'm afraid of silence being the only option." Baron gave a soft smile. Not smug, not defeated, just present. "Well," he said, "you didn't come to disappear." She nodded. "I came to be heard." And in that moment, the room wasn't reacting. It was listening. Not all victories are loud. Some land softly, then echo forever. The segment ended with applause, not thunderous but honest. The music returned, the credits rolled, the cameras dimmed. Backstage, Caroline stepped off the platform and into the wings. Her team stood there silent, not because they were disappointed, but because they were processing. She hadn't just survived, she had shifted the room. In the control booth, producers stared at the playback monitor. One finally whispered, "She didn't flinch. She didn't need to." The clip of the mug shattering had already gone viral, but now it wasn't about a mistake. It was about a moment where someone stood in the fire and didn't burn. That night, Caroline didn't go to a celebration. She didn't post a victory thread. She walked home alone under the DC streetlights, her phone vibrating with messages from people she hadn't heard from in years. But she wasn't looking at the screen. She was remembering how it felt to sit in the eye of the storm and speak anyway. Some moments go viral, others go permanent. By the next morning, headlines bloomed across the spectrum. Left-leaning blogs, Baron holds his ground, but Leavitt impresses with poise. Right-leaning outlets, Leavitt outclasses Baron in viral clash. But on social media, the comments weren't about who won. They were about what changed. She didn't clap back. She brought calm. That was leadership, not theater. For once, I watched to laugh and stayed to think. A young woman posted, "I'm not in politics, but watching Caroline made me believe I don't have to shrink to be taken seriously." In classrooms, offices, dinner tables, the clip was shared not as a debate, but as an example, a model. Back at the studio, Baron turned to Caroline one last time. The crowd was gone. The lights were off. "Off the record," she nodded. "Thank you," he said. "That was more than I expected." She smiled. "That's the best kind of moment, isn't it?" He laughed. "You know, my fans are going to roast me." "Mine too," she said, "which means we did something right." They shook hands, not as host and guest, but as two people who stepped into the arena and left it better than they found it. In a world that rewards shouting, she chose silence. In a space built for performance, she chose presence. Caroline Leavitt didn't come to dominate the room. She came to dignify it. She didn't trend because she yelled louder. She trended because she listened deeper. Her story wasn't loud, but it was lasting. And across millions of screens, her quiet answer did what truth rarely does on television. It landed, not with fireworks, but with stillness, still enough for the world to hear.